Okay, everybody, I'll call the meeting to order. It's 4 o'clock. Thank you. I want to read out Rule 8 under the meeting procedure. Rule 8 states, I advise all present that an audio recording is being made of this meeting. All persons attending the meeting are to be respectful of and considerate towards other persons attending the meeting. Language and conduct at the meeting that would be perceived as offensive, defamatory, or threatening to a person attending the meeting or listening to the recording is not acceptable. And I will be very firm. If I, in my judgment, feel that that's happening, I will warn you. And you can, then I will lead you to section 49, what the process is with regards to that warning, and you will have the right before I make any decision. Now, for the purpose of this recording, elected members should wait for the chairperson to announce before they commence speaking. And I request all mobile devices be either turned off or put to silent, please. And the other reminder is that when you're speaking, could you please make sure that you speak to the mic for recording purposes, and it's on when it's a green light. Now, present at the meeting today, we have the CEO, we have the project manager of Whole Settle, Neil Noy, Councillor Basalt, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, Councillor Kitsos, Deputy Lord Mayor Sherlock, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Elliott, and Councillor Kelly, and I'm the chair, Mike Dutta. Leave of apologies. We have one apology from Alderman Zuko. Are there any other apologies?
No, Chair.
No. Leave of absence, there is none. Acknowledgement to country. We, on behalf of the others, acknowledge the First Nations people, the original custodians of the land upon which the city of Hobart was built. We also recognize for thousands of years that the First Nations people cared for this country. We also note their connection to the country, which is spiritual, it is cultural, and it is enduring. We also acknowledge the truth of the Australian history and the fact that they went through a lot of suffering and pain, and they have survived. We pay respect to their leaders, both past and present. Number 2, confirmation of the minutes. Someone would like to move that the 16th February 2026 minutes be accepted and confirmed. Thank you, Deputy. Those in favour? Those against? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item number 3 on the agenda, consideration of supplementary item. Are there any? No. Thank you. Number 4, indications of conflict of interest. Are there any? No. Item number 5, transfer of agenda items. Are there any transfers? No. Thank you very much. Number 6, item for workshopping 6.1. Now I'm going to call the CEO and the project manager, Neil Noy, I understand, will do the presentation. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I'll speak to the memo, the brief memo that was presented as a briefing document for elected members. I'll simply summarise that. The strategic purpose of this project is ultimately to enhance access to Kanani Mount Wellington and enrich the overall visitor experience, while prioritising safety and the environmental values of the site. We appreciate that there are significant challenges so far as access is concerned for the mountain, and we know that it's a heavily visited site with somewhat substandard visitor infrastructure. So this project is intended to present some options to enhance that, and there is a significant focus on Hall Saddle to serve a significant proportion of that objective. The grant funding, we were successful in receiving $3.2 million federal government funding under the Urban Precincts and Partnership Program, and we will augment that with approximately $400,000 in-kind support, primarily of officer time. The selection rationale for Hall Saddle was chosen to minimise the environmental impact on the mountain itself. Importantly, it has a safe road access and sufficient space to accommodate a contemporary visitor gateway. It's important that this project aligns with the broader strategic projects that are going on so far as the mountain is concerned. First and foremost, the Wellington Park Management Trust business case for a financially sustainable business model, and their planning around visitor infrastructure enhancement planning. So we need to make sure that what model that Wellington Park Management Trust comes up with, and we understand that that model will be released shortly, and so we need to ensure that what we do reasonably aligns with the Trust's intentions. Also, you will understand that the state government has been undertaking a strategic review to develop a long-term community vision for the mountain. We also understand that that will be released shortly, and so this project needs to be reasonably aligned with that vision. Importantly, the plan deliverables include a coherent business case. Going out to the community, we need to articulate the rationale for this project, what wicked problems we're trying to resolve, and that importantly that we can adequately deliver on those resolving those issues. So we need to develop that business case. We need a sustainable operating model for the visitor centre. We need to obviously engage our key stakeholders. Importantly, the intention of this project is to deliver statutory planning approvals for various projects, not only at Hall Saddle but any visitor infrastructure upgrades that we envisage necessary on the mountain, and importantly detailed design and cost estimates after any planning consent. So effectively what we wanted to deliver is shovel-ready projects for future council, state and federal and commercial investment opportunities. We know that any future grants, we know that federal government do like to de-risk their funding grants to the point where they do favour projects that are shovel ready, and that does require statutory approvals. The project plan envisages a 24-month timeframe to completion from now to having all those approvals in place, detailed construction designs and costings delivered. So that is fundamentally the project. So happy to take any questions you might have in relation to it.
So can I just, thank you so much, Neil, I appreciate it. Can I just suggest that we begin with the questions first, and after the questions then we'll make statements and discussions. Okay, any questions, Deputy?
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Neil, for your presentation. So Councillor Posselt and I had received an email today just around, questions around Hall Saddle and the potential sort of vision for it. So could you, and I did read in the report the stages and the various different things that are going to happen. Could you just maybe give me a timeline, just so I suppose the community is aware of how they can get involved, the questions they can ask, perhaps even, the submissions that they made for the Mountain Review as part of the state government project, just how they could get involved as part of our consultation.
Thank you. So before we go out to the community, we want to make sure that we've have the business case well developed, because that'll be important information for the community to respond to. So that is primarily our first task as a project. We want to have that completed by July, August this year rather, and consultation with the community we want to commence immediately after that for the rest of this calendar year. So it's our intention to be out to the community around that time, August, September.
So that'll have like 4 or 5 months, 4 months or so.
Yeah, it'll be a couple of months. We need to obviously have information sessions. We intend to open the site up.
So as part of that community consultation, you'll also have information sessions?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Thank you.
But the business case will be critical. We will have completed the review of the master plan. We've already engaged a consultant to undertake that work, Terroir. And so both the business case and that review master plan will form the basis of initial engagement on the Hall Saddle uplift.
Wonderful.
Any other follow-up questions,
Thanks.
Deputy?
No, thank you.
No.
Thanks very much.
Councillor Harvey.
Neil, will this next process include commercial possibilities for the site? Because we always talk about how we'd like to diversify our income streams.
Yeah.
So I'd like to think that there's opportunity for some multiple businesses operating out of the site, which could impact our bottom dollar, potentially the ratepayers. And also the cultural centre that was mentioned previously, not the one that was in the closed but in the open really, previously here, but the talk of cultural centres at Hall Saddle from several years ago when this was being explored. Is that still on the book? Is that still on the books?
Yeah. So coming to first question, the review of the master plan does seek to establish opportunities for commercial investment in the site, whatever form that might take. So we hope to have some ideas coming out of that process. So that'll shape those opportunities. In relation to First Nations cultural input into the visitor centre or the opportunity to have their stories told, we will be certainly engaging suitable consultants to ensure that we and that community that their stories are incorporated with any visitor sort of centre opportunities there, interpretation and the like.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Any follow-up? No?
That's good. Yeah.
Alderman Bloomfield.
Sorry.
No, you're right. With the business case you've referred to, my understanding would be that this will be a cash flow positive experience for the council. Is that the expectation? What's the risk of it not? Is it very high? Are we looking at a high margin, low margin?
Yeah, look, until such time as we complete that, ideally it's desirable to have visitor centres operate on a cost neutral basis. We know with our current visitor centre, we don't necessarily do that as far as I'm aware. We are reliant on state government assistance in relation to that. But we want to explore those models and what that looks like and what's involved in achieving cost neutral.
Because if we're just simply building to have more ongoing costs, I'm not really sure that's really a viable way to go forwards. I'm not saying it has to be substantial, but look, realistically, why wouldn't we be building at least say a 5% model, something modest, so that if it dips, we just go down to break even. But I mean, with all the amount of work we're doing, I would never have thought that we would not be budgeting just to have a little bit there. So genuinely for the community, we're actually ahead, not yet for the client, especially since there's commercial operations here. We really would reasonably, I thought, have the right to expect that we're going to give back a little bit more to the community, not just build a millstone, which is what will happen if we do that, because we've done that with the others, and then everyone complains how high our rates are. But if we're building for a modest profit, then you can have occasions when we are cost neutral, but ultimately we should be able to build services for other things with this money.
I think the council has had a proposal for quite some significant time around a visitor centre, but also a transit centre, so an ability to be able to better manage transport onto the mountain. I mean, so in terms of whatever happens, the business case is the first real case of putting a rigor around what that might look like in terms of whether it be an access charge to the mountain or whether it be shuttle bus, whether it be a vehicle-based charging system, or there will need to be a revenue that attaches to it, because as you say, a visitor centre by itself won't be financially viable. It needs to have another revenue source that will attach to it.
Yeah, thanks.
And it's my understanding that that's what the Wellington Park Management Trust is doing at the moment, is trying to get a sustainable financial footing for the park generally, and a visitor centre associated with that would take, hopefully identify some of that funding to support that.
Any follow-up question, Alderman Bloomfield? No, thank you. Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Chair. I think the CEO largely answered my question, but I was just wondering if you could elaborate on what transport options will be in scope of the business plan in terms of all of the things that were just mentioned, and access to the mountain, parking, public transport, private bus use, that sort of thing.
Yeah. So ideally, we want to provide sufficient parking at Hall Saddle to accommodate the needs of visitors to the mountain, and as indicated, a shuttle bus service is in scope for this, not dissimilar to Cradle Mountain, that type of service.
We still need to wait. The state government strategic review, when it is released, and hopefully that is in the next 6 to 8 weeks or so, that they have examined different transport options and different possibilities for the mountain. That's examined things like whether it's feasible to widen, Pinnacle Road, for instance, to make it safer and more appealing for traffic users, through to limiting use and or shuttle bus, or so there's a range of options. And so in terms of this project, the timing of it will be pretty advantageous for us to wait to see that happen, and that'll be in the next month or so, 6 to 8 weeks, and then we can obviously take a lead from that work in terms of what this site is.
Great, thanks.
Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a bit strange how there's 3 studies all of a sudden being done on the mountain. Nothing gets done for decades, and all of a sudden, state government, the Wellington Park Trust, and now us. My fear there is that we're tripping over one another, and it's good to hear the CEO say, look, let's wait and see what the state government review says. At the end of the day,
Councillor Kelly, can I just remind you, if you can just keep with the questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll have a discussion.
Sure.
And
So, will we, so you're saying, CEO, that the review will be available in a few weeks?
Yeah, I'm trying to argue, councillor, I want it to come to you guys before it gets publicly released, and so
Yeah.
that's something I'm putting to government pretty heavily at the moment,
Yeah.
which I think is fair and reasonable, given that we have $90 million worth of assets on the mountain, so.
Have they, you're not privy to say, because you're on that state government.
I'm not on the, I'm on the reference group, but I'm not on the actual, the steering committee, if you like.
Have they given any indication about the cable car as yet, or anything
Not-
like that? That'll come out in the
Yes,
review.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, all right. That's my only questions.
Thank you,
Thank
thank
you.
Any other questions? Councillor?
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick one around, I also put this out into ether today just to see if anyone had anything that I hadn't thought of, questions. And one thing that I hadn't thought of was about firefighting access and also opportunity as part of this plan to bolster firefighting in the area. I don't know what that might look like, but has that been considered as part of, pump station, town water, all of that type of infrastructure?
We're already pretty well catered for in that sense. There is going to be, like with the Wellington Park Trust plans that are coming out at the moment, there's a lot more focus that needs to be applied across the whole mountain in terms of fire trail management and what we need to do in that respect. Our council, as you know, are already very active in that space for the land that we control. So, I mean, this site probably has some opportunities potentially, but I don't know that it's ideally placed, and that'd be a matter for David and his team, Sean, to have a look at, I think, but it's not something that's in the brief.
No.
Yeah, hence the question.
Yeah.
Other than satisfying, the requirements to protect that piece of infrastructure with suitable water supplies and the like. So there'll certainly be that, but in terms of a broader remit, no.
Any other questions? No, okay, we'll open it for statements, discussion. Councillor Kelly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, as I was saying before, the three views, it's going to be interesting to see how it pans out. Also, too, the Aboriginal situation, having a cultural place seems fantastic, I think. I suppose that's got to be pitted too about any other options that are being considered at the moment as well, which is on the table, I guess. At the end of the day, the state government are the ones, I guess, that can say and do what they want to. They probably trump us and the Wellington Park Trust, even though the trust is run under legislation. That can be changed, I guess, if they want to belligerently get their way. And I guess if the cable car, dare I say, was to proceed and put up there and all that, it's just going to turn this whole thing on its head. And I do worry that we go too far down the track, and if for some reason the cable car was to happen, we could be left a bit high and dry on there. But I suppose we've got to really look closely at the other two reports and work them into what we're doing. So it's going to be an interesting few months, I think, especially with this state government review one. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I'm really pleased with this. I've been involved in a couple of the motions that have gone to council, sort of trying to drive this process, and the fact that the council staff have managed to achieve some funding from the federal government is really good news. I'm really pretty pleased with everything I can see here from Mr. Noy. It is a 2-year process, I guess, which is a bit of a concern, but there is a lot there to do. I acknowledge that. I'm not particularly concerned about the other two reviews. I don't know that they're anywhere near as directly focused on whole saddle as this one is. So they're actually slightly different things. But yes, look, I'm just glad we're finally doing it. It's been on the back burner for a long, long time, this process, and it's finally happening, and I absolutely welcome it. Thank you, Chair, and thank you to the staff.
Thank you. Any other statements, discussion, contributions? Deputy.
Yeah, I'll just, I suppose, reiterate Councillor Lohberger's comments just briefly, really quickly. I'm so excited to just have this go out so that we can have community involvement and consultation around what community expects of this particular space, and it's nice that the ball is rolling. So thank you to the staff for their work.
Any other? Councillor Passat.
Yeah, thanks. I think there's a lot of, this is incredibly complicated in many respects. So there's obviously multiple land management authorities, but also transport considerations, as well as what actually happens at the site itself. The plan looks good to me. I noticed in there that it mentioned co-design, which is not, a lot of our reports say consultation, and this report it said community co-design, and I think that that is really, really good. So there's the locals around Ridgeway and Horse Saddle, obviously our key stakeholders, and there's also interest in Ferntree for hospitality and things like that to enhance their level of service as a community. So I think there's a whole lot of stuff that probably the 12 of us around this table aren't broad enough. So I just think that consultation element's really important. And then, you know, the business case, I guess, if there's any element that we might be closing the road or limiting the road, I think that we need to be very careful with both communications but also with the business case around that. And really, if that's where it heads, it then falls on the bus service to deliver. So if you close the road, the business case looks good, but then we only provide a half-hourly service and there's no turn up and go 15-minute service and no one's happy, and you can't, it now takes you 4 hours to go for a run on the mountain when it once took you an hour, I don't think the community's going to be happy. So that's what I mean. There's a lot of moving parts in this. I think that the plan's good. I think that the co-design element is good, and just that the business case needs to be really, really thorough when it comes to limiting access on the road, and consider a whole lot of user groups that maybe like to take up bucket loads of climbing gear with them and things like that. You might have to have a trailer on a bus that can do that. But I'm sure all of that will come to council in due course. So thanks for your work, Neil.
Any other comments, any other points to be made? No, thank you very much for your contributions. We move on to 6.2, Draft Creative City Strategy. Thank you, Neil, for your contribution. I invite the Director, Community and Economic Development, and the Manager, Creative City, to introduce the item. Thank you very much. All right, we're ready. Thank you very much. Again, we'll follow the same process. Okay, we'll have the presentation, questions first, and then we'll enter into statements and discussion and debate. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, elected members and councillors. It's 18th of September, I think we were last here. Seems like so long ago. Since that time, we have spoken to a lot of people and gone through a ridiculous amount of post-it notes and hopefully come up with something which I believe is now out with public consultation. So today we're really here to discuss the draft strategy, which you should have in your papers, and also for us to talk a little bit about how we believe the strategies that we have proposed might be turned into actions. But it's very clear we're not writing the actions for this strategy. That is for the staff and officers to further process. Obviously, through and following on from the co-creation, there's been a very strong input from community, internal officers and the arts sector in this, and these are the things that we heard.
Yeah, we heard, bear in mind as well that when we talk to people, they don't see the arts or cultural area as separate from anything else. So we did have a fair number of comments about parking and things like that, of course, but they're all part of that bigger picture. And I think one of the points about the results of this is that it does need to be a holistic look at the way we work with the arts. So more connected and welcoming creative life. That was something that came over in both kind of, or many ways. We've summarised it here, but both being physically connected, to be able to walk between things, precincts, more connected in terms of being online, being what's on. So a whole way of being more connected with people. I'm going to run through them quite quickly. Very high on the list was Tasmanian Aboriginal Engagement and Visibility. We talked to both the Aboriginal Tasmanian community and others. All felt that there were more opportunities to increase the ways that we work with that community, and also its visibility within the programme. Thank you, Tony. Surprisingly, a lot of people came up, well, it was surprising to us, but mountains, rivers, and those things came up. And I think that was something around the environment that we hadn't, you tend to think of the city, but actually a lot of people said, well, what are we doing in terms of arts and culture of the mountain, or what's happening on the river? So, and similarly, internally, there was a lot of talk about, well, there's the winter season, there's the summer season, there's all of those things. So actually connecting the programme to the place and the landscape and the times of year was something else that we heard. It's a bit of an obvious one, I suppose, but more places to create, gather and explore for all aspects of the community. We've talked with parents, children, young people, had some young people go out and do, we briefed up some, we didn't go out and sort of sit in front of young people, we briefed up some young people who then spoke to some young people, so we had a good spread of thoughts, and obviously more spaces to create, gather and explore was one. This is a trickier one to explain in a sense, but I suppose it was more about taking a bigger picture. And I'll explain on the next slide how we translated this. But this is around a way of thinking about the arts that isn't a one-off programming, isn't this year, next year, but it's more around how do we feed and support a program and ecology, I suppose, of what goes on around the city. We heard from kids and a lot around young people, playful, experimental, surprising, using unexpected spaces, coming upon things a little more, a bit more surprising. Experimental was more opportunities perhaps for emerging artists, more tryouts with people. Equity, access and comfort kind of goes without saying. Parking is obviously in there, but access to the arts is obviously important. One that came across with everybody. And the last one was, we did a big session with the arts sector in the area, and a big area for them is about supporting emerging creatives, young people, and giving them real opportunities to build the future of creativity in this city. So that was another key area of what we heard. Thank you. Shared effort was, I think, particularly among the sector, and I suppose, the reality is there isn't going to be handfuls of new money coming out to the arts. There isn't going to be, it's in somewhat a reflective time for arts organisations, statewide and nationally. So I think there was a real feeling like it was quite unusual for the arts community and others to work together to make this work, and to work in partnership with council to make it work. Yep. So we kind of put this all together, and one of the sort of key themes that came out for us, obviously, was something that was obviously invented right here in Hobart, which is permaculture, which is a way of looking at the land, space and environment around us in a much more holistic and regenerative way. And so we turned this, really we've got 5 principles here that we took from permaculture that we thought was really relevant to the way the arts ecology works. So one of them is work with what's already there. You don't need to invent and make a whole load of new things. Work with there, build on existing people, places, strengths, and the cultural activity that we have here already, rather than constantly creating new systems, new things, one-off projects. Time. Take it a little bit slower, grow capacity over time, focus on long-term relationships, long-term partnerships, building skills, supporting infrastructure and trust, so that each thing builds upon the next one. Diversity and connection. Gardens and land is full of a whole range of different plants. You can't strip out certain ones. They feed each other and support one another. So healthy systems, as a city like this, they thrive on differences and celebrate those differences across cultures, ages, practices, places and ways of working, and on connecting those things. Small interventions. The edges are very important in permaculture. You can't let the little things just weed them out. So enable some low-risk experimentation, small improvements, rather than relying on big projects here and there to kind of make it work. And the last one, which I talked about already, was the care, resilience and renewal, which is a kind of regenerative notion, I suppose, around ensuring the cultural activity supports the well-being, inclusion and sustainability, and leaving the city more capable and connected after each investment, rather than feeling we're starting again every time, that there's a general growth. So we took those principles, and that's what we have applied to our key kind of outcome areas that Tony's going to talk about.
Thank you, Simon. You will see in the report, and I won't go through them all, but we have, as we said in September, the idea of this strategy is it fits within existing strategies. It doesn't replace, it kind of meshes together, and so we spent a fair bit of time making sure that it not only aligns with the community vision, but down to the Central Hobart Plan, country, culture, people, economic development. So hopefully we should be able to see this strategy kind of have really obvious linkages into existing strategies. So that leads us to the vision. Yep. I rushed ahead.
Our vision is Hobart becomes Australia's most creative city where imagination shapes our future. And we've come up with a sort of sub-tag here, which you'll see makes sense with where we're about to go, that between the mountain and the river, there's the place, the sense of landscape. Imagination shapes everyday life in Nipaluna, Hobart. It's rooted in our people's stories and landscapes, and the city will cultivate ideas that spark possibility. We nurture what makes this place extraordinary. We bring culture and creativity into public life, and we stand boldly for authentic expression.
And obviously from this vision statement, we led to 4 outcome areas, and that's city as champion, city as custodian, city as a curator, and city as a catalyst. And these link directly into the vision statement. So city as a champion is about the city standing boldly for authentic expression. City as custodian is nurture what makes this place extraordinary. City as curator is bringing culture and creativity into public life. And the city as a catalyst is the city will cultivate ideas that spark possibility. So again, we see this quite well bedded. And that leads us to the actual outcomes. And what we've done here is, and so you've got these outcome areas in the document. One of the things that we wanted to talk about is actually what do the strategies actually mean. Obviously strategies are there for everyone to pick up on, not just the arts and events team. They're there for planning, they're there for reception, they're there for the whole council to respond to. So obviously strategies like position, Tasmanian Aboriginal engagement, visibility and...
I was just going to step in, sorry, very briefly, just to say that before, just to put this to where it was before, the Creative Hobart had 3 key areas. And one of the things we did here overall, I think we could say, is there was much more opportunity for the council to be a champion and to lead and to do all these things that we're about to talk about. So this in a way is a new strand of the activity that we see the council doing. Sorry.
Yeah, and now Simon's put the brakes on my ramble, which I thank him for. It's not a bad thing, but I suppose the other thing that was really...
We work too much together.
That's right. We too much. The other thing to stress is, while there has been Creative Hobart, and we've talked about this on September 18, this is also a strategy for the events team. It's also a strategy for the venue team. And one of the principles of where we've got to with this is that there should be seamless integration within that team. So there shouldn't be an events and activation team, there shouldn't be an arts and cultural team, there is a creative city team. And so it works together as a whole to actually deliver these things. So having worked here in 2018 where there was silos and division and things didn't communicate, the idea that the strategy might actually finally, and I think Kimbra might even acknowledge the start for this discussion was 2015, 2014, the idea of a unifying arts and cultural strategy that brings all these elements together is actually quite a good outcome. So, obviously in the outcome area of champion, obvious strategies about positioning Tasmanian Aboriginal engagement, visibility and cultural safety across the creative activity. Quite simply, this is an expectation of every capital city. If you look at every capital city, federal government, state governments, it's the first statement. It is very important to have up there. Communication was the thing that almost everyone, both internally, externally, the sector, young people, people at Mather's Place said, we don't know what the council's doing. We don't know what's on. The council internally went, we need better ways of communicating out. People outside went, we need better ways of communicating in. So communication is an important role for this team. And not just doing things, but also managing the way they communicate. But again, this extends it out. It is also about the comms team. It's about how the city communicates as a whole. It's not about putting out more and more communication. It's about making that effective.
It's also not like the city's not doing anything already.
No.
It's doing absolutely masses. It's just actually sometimes not very visible to people what is going on.
So out of this outcome area, we've suggested, especially from our consultation, the kind of things that we would anticipate could come out of these strategies. And obviously we're not saying you have to do these, but these are kind of, I suppose, conversation points that we, through the conversations that we had, make obvious areas to go to. And obviously under the champion area, prioritising the effective resourcing of Tasmanian Aboriginal programs. So rather than just making spaces and having things to actually say, we will make sure this happens. So we're also not saying you need to put more money into it, but it's a conscious choice that you have to make sure it's resourced properly, and that's physical resources and financial resources. You can't just say we're going to do it. And the second one is obviously develop the city's role as a communicator and a source of information for the public and the sector. Okay? So
That was very strong.
like everywhere. So custodian, do you want to talk to custodian?
You're doing quite a good job actually.
Okay, all right, we'll keep on going, there we go.
I'll jump in and interrupt.
So obviously custodian is that the city does have a role in looking after things. That is part of the job of being a city. It's also part of the job of being a capital city. Conversations were very strong about preserving heritage, natural environment, colonial heritage and pre-colonial heritage. You know, there was, people wanted it all, and obviously we'll see a little bit further how important tourism is to the city and to the city's economy and the health and well-being of the city. And so heritage is a massive part of that as well. People come to the city looking for the stories, looking for the different stories. So the role of the city as a custodian is very important. So the strategies are about building long-term investment and having long-term approaches that build capacity as opposed to getting out of the yearly or 6-monthly cycle of people lining up for money and then coming back or not being successful. It's actually building partnerships. Emphasis on storytelling and connections, and obviously placemaking is a really big part of this. So this is not just about the arts and culture team. And also, importantly, ensure that the facilities that you have, be it the town hall, be it City Hall, be it the basement underneath the town hall, are actually fit for purpose. It's not good enough just to say we've got all these spaces now, someone go off and do it. Not everyone's like Dark Mofa who can afford to kind of put all the infrastructure in. If we want a creative city, one of the city's role is to make sure that these spaces are actually safe and workable and resourced and well equipped so that people can put stuff on. Okay. So obvious outcomes of that is building long-term partnerships with key cultural events and producers, and an example would be, as we have discussed, developing City Hall as a live music venue. And more, you know. There are some really obvious ones in here where the city, again, has to make a choice. We do this or we do that. And we would hope that the cultural strategy would support that.
That was something we heard strongly, I'm adding in here, about venues and places that, you know, why isn't there more going on, or can I access it?
City as curator, the city does have a role. This was one area that we thought was a little bit weak in Creative Hobart, and that is that the city actually does have talent, it has knowledge, it has capability, and the city should be allowed to actually, and Hobart Current's a really good example of that. Like, you have people who know what they're doing here, and the city should be able to lead. The Christmas pageant's a good example. There are people who know what to do, and the city should be able to take a lead on some of its own cultural activities. Many other cities do. Creative Hobart tends to rely on other people coming in and delivering outcomes for the city, and we see this as a great opportunity to take some lead, but it also goes to issues of placemaking, and one of the things that we found is that we've got a lot of strategies about what happens there and what happens there and what happens there throughout the city, but there's less focus on how do those things connect and what are the stories that make people travel that way. And I think that was also obvious for public art, that we've got a lot of public art, but a lot of people go, A, we don't know where it all is, and B, we don't know why it all fits together, or why that's there and not there. And I mean, I think a classic example at the moment, every night I've been driving past because my son works at wool stores and I have to pick him up at 11 o'clock at night, and so every night I get to see the cardinal lights, which are currently lit by, I'm guessing for Italy, for the tricolour for, I'm guessing, the Winter Olympics, but I have no idea why the city, these big bright things are green, red and white. You know, there's just things that are happening that aren't kind of connected up.
I think we did have Festa Italia.
Maybe, but again, I think my point is,
feels.
yeah. But up the other end of town. So you know what I mean? It's kind of it's finding out why we do things and why they connect. So I mean, one of the outcomes of this is, and there is a start of the winter and the summer season, but we would strongly recommend that there is almost an annual program of the creative city, which is arts, events, venue hires. I mean, one of the interesting things when we're talking to people about dance and music, and that you go, we do a bit here, and then you look at what's happening in the town hall, and you know, almost every week there is a dance show or there's a music show which is unconnected to what the other team do. So there's a bigger picture that we could kind of connect everything to.
And that's building on the value of the things we're already doing.
That's right. Yeah. And finally, Catalyst. Do you want to give me a break?
I can do, yeah.
Good, thank you.
Catalyst, celebrate a culture of creative experimentation. As I said, that's around a real opportunity to spark new ideas, new thoughts, to bring people together, to generate new work. The diverse unexpected places. It's a council role to see and activate perhaps spaces that have not been enabled before. And small scale is fine. Things don't have to be huge. I mean, that point about the connectivity between spaces, people just like walking between somewhere and somewhere else in the evening and coming upon something. The last one is pretty important around cultivating a regulatory environment that enables creative freedom. Lots of conversation around, we can't do that because, we haven't been able to do that because. So I think this is a bit of a bigger one around how internally there is a culture of enablement, I suppose. That's really what this is about. And supporting ways that things can happen and not that things don't happen. And that's a kind of a bit of a culture change in looking at, obviously within safe, I'm not talking about doing things unsafely, but just a bit more creative experimentation. And so a couple of, do you want to?
Well, sorry, I just wanted to add, interestingly, that issue about risk was as much discussed internally, where officers and people who work here feel uncomfortable supporting things that might be seen to be risky for a whole load of, you know, or just access because of the implications of what it means. So it is a big conversation that needs to be had. It's when officers say it's easier to say no to something than work out how you can do it, that suggests that a broader conversation has to be had.
And none of our recommendations here are on increasing budget. These two specifics are around working within current budget of, you know, maybe bringing in some quick response grants, small amounts. For the organisation I work with separately, our quick response grants are the most popular, the most successful. Small amounts of money, get people able to do things quickly. They're real catalyst grants. And the other one is when something big comes along, like City of Literature, then there is only so much in the pie here. It's around saying, well, if that's there, we need to devote time and resources to City of Literature. It's a pretty important, very important thing that the city has now got to react to, having that, basically. So they're the four.
Yeah. I think importantly, obviously the next bit it doesn't go into the public report, but currently I'm also doing calculations with the state government about how much the arts and cultural sector contributes to GSP. And we've come to a figure of around about $700 million, which is the basic federal calculation is about 170 million. Under the new methodology that we've kind of tested in Tasmania, that figure goes up to about just under 700 million. And given Hobart's share of GSP, we would really confidently say that considering the bulk of arts events outside of Foo Fighters happens down here, I would say as a minimum we would be looking at 44 to 45% of that cultural economic contribution being in the Greater Hobart region. So we're looking at least a $275 million contribution to the local economy. So, you know, the council's investment in $5 million, it's about $5 million, actually does have a lot of capacity that comes with it.
Interestingly, the 70% too.
Well, and thank you, Simon.
The 30.
Thank you for reminding me of that. The biggest benefit of the arts and cultural economy is actually not the artists, is not the people who are working it, it's the people who run the F&B, who runs the accommodation, who runs all the other things that are associated with the sector. So an investment in arts and cultural activity actually has its broadest knock-on into the wider community. But we've all seen that through COVID, if you fund artists, if you fund people who are working in that sector, it goes straight back out into the wider economy as well. So, you know, there is a good knock-on effect that comes out of arts and cultural investment. So,
We'll leave you with
the vision and questions and thoughts. Well,
Thank
is that
you.
your job?
Yeah, my
sure?
job, don't worry, I'll just control it for you.
You're
That's
doing it very well.
Thank you so much. Any questions? We begin with the questions first, remember, and then later we'll have a debate and discussion. Any questions? Councillor Passau.
Thanks. I assume you've written strategies like this for other places.
Yes, we have.
Yes.
Just checking.
It was your first rodeo, I'd be worried.
And we also did the research initially for this, looking at other cities, obviously.
Yeah, so I mean, what I was going to say was, I mean, I love what you put together here, but what was it that made Hobart different or special, and what opportunities are there that we have that maybe some of the other cities that you've written strategies for, I have no idea who they are, but don't have? What is it that makes them
Well, I
special
think in a
space?
sense that vision, the mountain and the river, I mean, immediately the landscape is something very, very special and unique to here that can be built upon. Sorry? Yeah, it's place-led, and you know, we've got a very powerful connection to First Nations people here, and that is something that can be really built on. It's a First Nations first initiative nationally.
Otherwise? Look, I mean, to divulge trade secrets, we a couple of years ago did Glenorchy's first arts and cultural plan after 25 years. I mean, Mona appeared, you know, then they had nothing. Their focus was very much on community, like what the community did. There was a sense that a lot of artists, a lot of practitioners lived in Glenorchy Moona, so they wanted a cultural policy that was very much about that grassroots activity. If you look at the current City of Sydney cultural strategy, that is very much about their arts and cultural sector, which generates a lot of money, employs a lot of people, is obviously very high, is in a state of kind of catastrophe, and so their whole strategy is about rebuilding the capacity of that industrial sector. I mean, we were really quite particular about finding something that was about Hobart, and everyone talked about the mountain and the river and the place, you know, and it was not, you know, no one talked about Mona, no one talked about that, they talked about the whole environment. So for us to find something that actually reflected that unique Hobart element, and it was a kind of a serendipity to me that permaculture was a Hobart thing, it kind of fitted quite well. I'm not suggesting that the cultural policy is about gumboots and spades, but it kind of is something that is a bit Hobart. Yeah.
It's very Tasmanian, actually,
Yeah.
and it's capital city as well. That's the other thing to bear in mind.
Any other questions?
No, I
Councillor
haven't
Brooke.
spoken, so it's okay.
You okay? Any other questions? No discussion and debate. Councillor Bull.
I wanted to put another layer over the top of this because I've been thinking about the creative city for a while. And from the perspective that I see, you've nailed a lot of it, but there's a layer I'd like to see where we acknowledge that creative elements in a city create, they attract people, they make it sticky, and they also, they direct people into our city. So they actually create noise, they create drama, they create spending, and they literally create bodies of people. So I think we also need to look at it with those eyes as well, and perhaps look at elements that go a little outside our standard visual, creative, or dramatic. We could even look at art in gardens.
Totally.
Because when you're talking about the spades and so forth, we have a lot of that occurs actually at the botanical gardens. There's whole elements of artwork within that, not just your sculptures, but actually the way things are put together and posed together. So I would like to see acknowledgement of that, because in some ways that's how we're going to measure if it's successful. Because it won't just be we had an event or we had things happen. It's like, what was the side effect of that? And the side effect needs to be something that we can actually say, well, look, it attracted these people. We created destinations, and really this is about creating some unique and regular destinations which create habits over time. Because if we want to make it the most creative city, then we have to have habits forming of, well, that's where we go because we want to be entertained or we want to be participating in something that's interesting to us. So those are kind of where I would be focusing on.
And look, you're absolutely right. I think if you, especially when we talk about how it fits in with the economic strategy, I think it's very clear the economic strategy is about that kind of activation. I think where we see the cultural city strategy is about actually making sure that activation is authentic and meaningful and responsive to being part of Hobart. So the two fit together. So we did feel as though we needed to write another part of the economic strategy where it's actually quite, in our mind, quite clearly labelled that activation, motivation, bringing people into the city, making the city livable is already quite an explicit function of the city. But you're absolutely right. I mean, those two functions have to work in tandem.
I mean, also we have so many flower shows here, which is something, until you're elected, you don't really appreciate just how many happen here. But that's something we could actually leverage with.
No, exactly.
Because they do have elements of that within them, but we could accentuate that, and create more of a destination, which helps them, but also helps the city in general as well by attracting even more people and more interest and so forth. So
I mean, sorry, and just one of the other things that I think is really important to stress is because this is a long-term strategy. I think Creative Hobart was 14 years. We were quite specific not to pick out specific things. So we don't talk about City of Literature because we didn't talk about Hobart Current. We don't talk about the Christmas pageant because this is meant to be the framework by which...
It's a strategy.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So the flower shows, and I completely agree, they're an amazing thing and they're embedded in the history. To us, that's part of the curation of the city, the history, the story we tell is very important. But,
And it's about embracing events.
That's right.
The other thing I was going to say there to answer your question was around, I think across the country generally, within grants programs that I'm aware of, there is far less emphasis now on individual art forms. What is happening is money is being given far more to people who work across, or teams of people who do things which are less specifically around one thing, but maybe work in a garden with a piece of music, with something else. So they're much more appealing, or have a much more broader appeal than a specific art form.
So that would lead to another question as well with this, because you're going to create something that's very left of field of what people have seen before or know how to negotiate with you. Because I noticed with the multicultural events, they've had to relearn how to negotiate, to understand how to work with the city, because things have changed. It's not a problem, it's just change. And I realise then the education component's actually quite significant, so it's just, okay, we'll do that. So we're going to change this. I would probably encourage that we have some kind of way of being able to negotiate and speak with people to explain to them what you're looking for and how it could be done, so that they start getting some, you know, things prepared in a way that meets expectation or exceeds it, because they know where you want to go.
No, I completely agree. I mean, and I think you're bang on the money, and I can openly say that's a job for the officers to progress. You know,
and it's also around not doing big things very quickly.
Yeah,
Oh, no,
It's
I
about
think it needs
iterative.
to be.
We've used that word, I think. You know, that
I
it's an
think
iterative.
it's about changing the strategy, changing the way they approach
Yep.
and so forth. Because really, at the moment, we've got to learn to be clever, and so do they.
Yep.
Because no one's got money.
and
It's not unique to us or them.
and there is going to be less money on the streets.
So we have to do
soon,
something to boost everyone.
Yeah, and the sector talked about resourcefulness. I think that's true.
Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. Councillor Harvey.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Do we have a cultural policy in the council? Is there such a thing?
Yeah, so this strategy is to replace Creative Hobart, which is the strategy. We do have, we do not have a cultural policy. We have got like various things that relate to that, so like the public art plan or country culture people, so the ones that are referenced within this document. We have identified the need for some policies which we're looking to working on now, like a collection policy, because we have an art collection, for instance, but we don't have an overarching cultural policy.
And where that's taken me is how we support artists as well. So I'm just looking at a document that I got a number of years ago, which is 195 pages long, about how every country in the world supports their artists, and that includes not being seen as a something for, that you do for free, where there's entitlements for artists, where they produce body of work and they're paid by the state as professional artists, where they receive their annual allowances. There's all sorts of support everywhere. What have we got? And this is probably a national or state-based thing, but how do we develop something that respects artists and the body of work that they produce, and to see them living in their car because they're not paid well is something we all should, I think, be aware of, because they've got their profession. It just doesn't make them a lot of money.
Councillor, good question. We do use standard rates. So within our grants program, for instance, we'll refer to the NAVA rate within the program. So that's the rate we pay, or the Volunteer Australia rate, because a lot of groups do put in a lot of community hours as well. And then within any EOI or contract that we put out, we would have those rates within those. We have also seen a lot more people starting to put in things like superannuation that you wouldn't have seen 5 years ago. So people actually putting those in within their grant applications or within their response to a EOI or a contract, which is great. So the standard rate of pay for artists is generally within the NAVA, the National Association of Visual Arts.
I guess it's beyond just paying them for their work. It's about that ingrained arts within society, where you're recognised as a person who delivers something good for society, and the society therefore supports you in your endeavours. So you don't have to apply for the dole; you've automatically got your yearly arts stipend or whatever it is to help you have the time to not live in your car and support your artistic endeavours and the enjoyment of society.
Sorry.
Go on.
I'll go now. You're absolutely right. There is a need for that. The state currently does not have a cultural policy. It would like to have one. It has a creative industries recovery plan. The Australia Council or the federal body does have something that values the role of artists. The state probably should have a position on that. I think it's hard, given Hobart's size to do that, but I would argue, if I can quickly go back to the champion, I mean, part of championing it is about also championing artists.
Absolutely.
And actually recognising that artists and art activity and events and cultural activity are important, and for a whole load of reasons. But I would also say the city's pillars are actually pretty strong. I think it's pillar 3. Really does provide a lot of guidance for recognising the importance of this kind of activity. So, I mean, maybe it could be more explicit, but I think the foundations of actually recognising its worth are there. So,
And I was going to just pick up on that champion. I think that's something we've felt. It is a leadership opportunity for somewhere in Tasmania to say, yes, we're going to pay artists properly, we're going to treat them properly, and we're going to invest in them over time. So,
Like artists in residence is another one.
Yep.
Especially when we've got a purpose-built building for it, sitting up there and over here, to have regular. So,
And
public
again, I mean,
art is another one.
the idea about developing City Hall, which is a personal thing of mine, is that actually giving them spaces, giving artists spaces to work.
I'm thinking Dorney House.
Sorry?
I'm thinking of
Dorney House, but giving people facilities that actually support their work as opposed to hinder their work is one step forward. as well.
Just to go follow up on that, when we did that, we probably said this last time, but when we did the research on the elements of the most successful creative cities in the world, most of them provide opportunities for makers in the city. So they don't just wait for people to come in and present. They actually do invest in spaces and places and people in the city to make, because they create the vibe. And that's what Melbourne does pretty well.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Councillor Passol.
Will officers take feedback on actions or suggested ideas as part of the session? Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. So, I mean, I think it's great. I think the vision statement's really good and captivates the imagination of me, as well as the intent here. There's so many things to say, really. But one of the things that's cropped up recently has been, you mentioned the mountain and a kind of unique city, and I can't remember what pillar it would apply to, but the illegal raves and doofs that are going on around the city are actually really important, is my view, including bush doofs, which like incredible stuff. But does this strategy potentially allow, through compliance, decreasing compliance and licensing stuff, is there a way that we can give these people, legitimise them so that they can actually have these amazing events?
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say within the catalyst, we did talk about the regulatory environment that enables.
You did, yes.
So that's a broad brush there to try and just say there are ways to support subcultural activity within the place, and how you do that safely and appropriately is the issue, obviously. But I would say we've generated that idea within being a catalyst, that you allow that to happen, and maybe then it comes into
or you work out a way to make. I mean, there was a lot of conversations about some councils look the other way, and we don't want to encourage that. No. But each council has got a different approach. I remember, like in the early 90s, Potts Point allowed cafes to put milk crates on the side of the street so that people could sit down and have a coffee out the front thing. Now, that doesn't meet regulation and coding and all of that, but it was allowed to happen, and it changed the culture of the kind of coffee around there. So how Hobart does it is up to Hobart. I think, I remember the pain of the parklets. So, I would not say that the creative strategy encourages bush doofs or tunnel doofs or, a whole range. We don't have a doof policy. But
we need doof policy.
That's right. But under a live music strategy.
Well, funny enough, I was going to mention that. So obviously, what the creative city strategy does advocate for is live music, and I think it's next month the council meeting we're bringing the live music office, which is Project 2 Council, which does focus on deregulation in those areas, so that people can be more agile, particularly musicians and venues, etc., and further develop the nighttime economy through less regulation. It does advocate, obviously, within a policy officer within that project, venues officer, but we will be bringing that to council
Yeah,
discussion.
Thank you.
I think-
Thank you very much. Is there a new point to be made by anyone? Can I take it to someone else before I come back? Anyone else? No? Okay, Councillor Passau.
Thank you, Councillor. I think that some of the fall downs for Hobart is that it's a little bit of a monoculture, and when we go to places, really vibrant cities, New York, Tokyo, they have incredible underground cultures, and so like fostering mini underground cultures would be really cool for this place. But as well as that, again, it might be catalysed, I can't remember which of the four pillars you've got, but the idea of bringing artists into town, you know, taking on an idea
And collaborating. That was the other one I was.
There's been a lot of talk about, and Alderman Bloomfield said this one before, so I apologise to her, but a lot of talk about shop tops in like Elizabeth Street that are not fit for building code to be lived in. But is there an opportunity for council to facilitate artist studios in those spaces, grant opportunities, subsidies? You know, those shops get a rates rebate if they host an artist upstairs.
I would say
That sort of
within this, there's lots of opportunities to look at all different spaces. Creative
I mean,
spaces.
following on from Councillor Kelly's conversation from last time we were here, outside of the building code, yes, you know, the council can't break the law, but if there's ways that it can help make those things happen, I mean, some councils incentivise landlords to do stuff. Some councils might give grants and support, so it's really how you respond to that. But you're right, it is a huge opportunity.
Street art's another one. I mean, actually supporting that properly and acknowledging where you can do this and where you can't by fostering a sense of collaboration. And it's also the communication of, you know, council is approachable. It's actually approachable by people.
And I'll just make one passing comment. And one of the officers internally raised the point that, you know, something like Dark Mofo can get away with a lot of stuff. It can it can bend rules. And the council lets it bend rules because the council knows, I talk about you all holistically, you know you can ring someone
that's what he
and
said.
they have the budget to fix it if something goes wrong. Okay? So the principle is there. How do you apply that principle to young emerging artists, to people doing doofs in tunnels? How do you make sure that things can be dealt with if things need to be dealt with, as opposed to saying don't do it? And so you can do it when there's a lot of money, a lot of resources and a lot of pressure, but it's more doing it on the grassroots level, which is a bit more difficult, but is possible.
And I'm not sure the word trust is actually in here, but trust was a word that came up quite a lot. All different ways.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Alderman Broomfield.
I've just got another stream for you to think about. I've gone to a lot of functions in the last few months, and there's been a real trend in the last few years particularly where some of the cultural organisers will bring people in from overseas and they'll get unique singers or dancers or incredible opera singers. There was one this last week from China. Before that, there was some really famous people from Greece, and there was before that there was some people from India, and they really do get quite large crowds. And I think perhaps we need to acknowledge that that happens as well, and that also is destination creating. That also is generating interest. It's just different to what we think of ourselves would attract and generate, but it also gives us a lot of those cross boundaries as well. Where if we start generically advertising and saying, well, these people are coming from these other countries and so forth, these are people that you're never going to be exposed to because you probably haven't had any life experience whatsoever to know these even exist. We've just got some really great opportunities, is what I'm thinking.
And a lot of that comes back to communication. A lot of these things are happening, but how do people know about it?
Yeah, so that's why I was just thinking, there's an actual door there between multicultural events and this, you know, and it could be that there could be some really interesting things off the side of each other that, you know, everyone wins and hopefully there'll be money that's more available through different ways and channels and the fact that some will pay for things and, I don't know, I just see it's a possibility.
Thank you. Anybody else? No, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we move to item number 7, questions without notice. Any questions? No questions, thank you. Someone move that we move to the, thank you, Councillor Kitsos.